All right. Well, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Talley from ByteCubed. Thank you for taking time to participate in today's workshop. This is the 11th and final in a series of workshops delivered in this webinar format. Next slide, please. Right, today's workshop topic focuses on Phase III Non-SBIR funding sources. Next slide, please. As a reminder, all participant microphones are muted for the duration of the webinar. Today's workshop is structured as follows: presentation, panel discussion, brief Q&A, and a post-workshop feedback survey. At the end of this webinar, you will be automatically redirected to a page where you will be asked to provide some feedback regarding today's workshop. It should take you less than 5 minutes to complete this survey. We will also send the survey to the email you used to register for this webinar. In terms of Q&A, we have received advanced questions, many of which will be addressed during today's presentation. Because of the advisory nature of many of the questions that were posed, we are not able to address all questions, but have attempted to give you a good basis for seeking additional information. We also encourage you to review previous workshop transcripts, recordings, and slides for other topics. This information can be found on our website. Our web address can be found on the last slide of this presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, we ask that you please click the blue button question located at the top of the page. Please limit today's questions to the scope of this workshop's topic. We will send an audio recording within 2 days of the workshop completion, as well as a transcript within 30 days. Next slide, please. Right. So the objective of today's workshop are to help you understand the Phase III process, types and sources of non-SBIR funding, as well as how to develop an effective approach to marketing your technology and securing funds from venture capital organizations. Next slide, please. All right. So today we are joined by presenters and panelists with a vast expertise of Phase III process and non-SBIR funding and working with both federal and commercial entities. I'd like to remind all speakers to please state your name prior to your presentation, as well as when you're making comments during the discussion on the panel. Today's moderators are me, Jason Talley, and Phil Reeves. I'd like to introduce each speaker and ask them to provide a brief bio, starting with Jangela Shumskis from Cali Group. Hey,
Sorry for the delay.
No
I had muted myself. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jangela Shumskis. I have been supporting DoD, SBIR, and STTR programs for just about 20 years, just shy of 5 years with the Army, 4 years with the Missile Defense Agency, and a little over 6 years with the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, also referred to as DARPA, and then the remaining years spread out at the Office of Secretary of Defense. And I'm super thrilled to be with you guys today.
All right, thanks, Angela. Next, we'll have Ann Newman representing DARPA.
Hi, guys. I have been at DARPA for 14 years. I started in the small business program, and then I had transitioned into the technical offices, where I worked for about 8 or so years and have been back in the SBIR program office for about a little over 3 years now.
All right, thanks a lot, Ann. And next we have Michael Weatherly from C5 BDI.
Hey everybody, glad to be with you today. This is Mike Weatherly, owner and operator, C5 BDI, along with my wife, Sierra. We are not a defense contractor. We are a consulting company that sits between government and industry and helps facilitate non-traditional contracts, some of those being Other Transaction Authority and SBIR Phase III. In the last year and a half, we've helped our industry partners win over $250 million in work and have challenged our team this year to do 50 Phase IIIs, 50 million. So if you do the math, it's 2.5 billion. So that's the challenge, and that's what we're going for, and we're excited to be on the panel today. So thank you.
Nice. Thanks, Dr. Weatherly. And next we have Michael Pansky with Intern, which is a new commercial capability offered by ByteCubed.
Hello, everyone. Mike Pansky, background in aerospace and defense, doing mergers and acquisitions and investments of SBIR technology, as well as commercial venture investment. Intern is a data analytics platform providing machine learning on government research and development, connecting that to the commercial ecosystem of about 15 trillion in venture investment, as well as millions of patents happening around the world, published research associated. And so excited to speak to everyone today.
All right, thank you for that, Michael Pansky. We have two Michaels, so you'll hear me saying the names like that. And last but not least, we have Mr. David Akers from SoftWorks.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Akers of SoftWorks. I've got a little over 20 years background working either active duty or supporting active duty programs, a particular niche in high technology solutions, RF, and a number of other capacities. Relatively new to the SoftWorks team. I'm here as a program manager, and we're working closely with SOCOM to try to get the latest and greatest to the field as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. Next slide, please. All right. So once again, I'd like to turn this back over to Jangela Shumskis from Cali Group.
Thank you, Jason. For my portion of today's workshop, I'll be focusing on the federal side of things. Next slide. So I very quickly wanted to talk about the definition of Phase 3 in the context of the SBIR and STTR programs and why these definitions are so important. Simply put, Phase 3 is the commercialization phase and the ultimate goal of each SBIR and STTR effort. Phase 3 work derives from, extends, or logically concludes efforts performed under a prior or ongoing SBIR, STTR contract or grant. It is, simply put, any work funded without SBIR, STTR funding. I want to add that small business reporting of Phase 3 is critical to demonstrate the ROI of the program to DoD leadership, as well as other key stakeholders such as Congress. Phase 3 reporting via the company commercialization report on the DoD SBIR STTR submission site is also critical in demonstrating your ability to commercialize your technology, which can positively impact subsequent Phase 1 and Phase 2 SBIR and STTR proposal evaluations. Next slide. So there are three basic scenarios that define Phase 3, and those are: one, you're an SBIR or STTR contractor receiving additional non-SBIR or STTR funds from a program office within DoD or elsewhere in the federal government to further the R&D of the SBIR or STTR technology. Scenario two, you are an SBIR STTR contractor receiving a subcontract from a major defense prime. And then scenario three, you are an SBIR STTR contractor receiving commercial funding in the form of product sales, service delivery, or investment through angels and venture capital. And in this third scenario, when I talk about product sales, what I mean is product sales in the commercial marketplace. So think of something that you or I could buy, essentially something that's not in a DoD platform. These scenarios encompass the main ways Phase 3 occurs. However, in scenarios 1 and 2, it is important to have the funding designated as Phase 3, also called a Phase 3 contract, in order to extend your data rights. If you'd like to learn more about Phase 3 and data rights, I highly encourage you to visit the Phase 3 material available at training.defensebusiness.org. There was also a workshop that was recently given on this subject about a month ago, and you can also find it seems like I just dropped off, but if anyone missed it, I was just referring to a place where you can find information on Phase 3 and data rights, and that's at training.defensebusiness.org. And in case you guys missed it, I referenced a recent workshop or webinar that we just did on this subject that's also available at that URL. Next slide. So this slide speaks to the ability of any entity in the federal government to sole source Phase 3. This is possible because the competition for Phase 1 and or Phase 2 satisfies any further competition requirements, including Phase 3. And again, Phase 3 simply refers to non-SBIR STTR funding. If you're interested in learning more about sole source of SBIR and STTR, I highly encourage you to review the Phase 3 guidebooks. Those guidebooks are typically available on the component-specific website, so Army, Navy, and Air Force each has one. They're also referenced on the SBIR training site, which again is training.defensebusiness.org. Next slide. There are some other key points to keep in mind regarding Phase 3. So there's no limit on the number, duration, type, or dollar value of Phase 3 awards made to a business concern. So while there are award caps on both Phase 1 and Phase 2, on Phase 3, and we're talking about Phase 3 contracts from the federal government, so again, non-SBIR STTR dollars that are used to further the R&D of the SBIR, the original SBIR STTR, the sky's the limit on how many of those that you can get. There is also no limit on the time that may elapse between a Phase 1 or Phase 2 award and a Phase 3 award, or between a Phase 3 award and any subsequent Phase 3 awards. So you could have had a Phase 1 or Phase 2 in a particular topic area, and that goes nowhere, and then all of a sudden, there is a program that has a requirement that is very much related to the work that you did. You can technically be sole sourced. A federal agency may enter into a Phase 3 SBIR agreement at any time with a Phase 2 awardee, so it can happen before you get a Phase 2 contract, after you're awarded a Phase 2 contract, once you finish your Phase 2 work, or while you're still working on your Phase 2 work. Similarly, any federal agency can enter in a Phase 3 SBIR STTR agreement at any time with a Phase 1 awardee, same type of scenarios. And finally, small business size limits for Phase 1 and Phase 2 awards, those don't apply to Phase 3 awards. So the idea of SBIR and STTRs for small businesses to grow into larger, medium-sized, and even bigger companies. And so if you have exponential growth, say like iRobot did, you can still continue to get Phase 3 awards and the associated data rights, regardless of the size and revenue. Next slide. So I'd like to take a few moments to discuss some of the successes of the SBIR and STTR programs. So I'm sure all of you have heard of Qualcomm, Symantec, Viasat, and iRobot. And what all of those companies have in common is they were recipients of SBIR and STTR awards. Of this list, iRobot received the most. They had 6 rounds of funding totaling $4.4 million from a combination of the Army, Navy, and DARPA. Qualcomm received $1.5 million, and Symantec was the very first recipient of an SBIR when the program started in 1982. The $275,000 of Phase 1 and Phase 2 contracts awarded to Symantec through SBIR stands as the poster child success story for government and private collaboration. And Viasat leveraged its SBIR into more than $175 million in DoD contracts that propelled the company to its current position in the communication technology field. So there are definitely some, I mean, these are probably some of the better and most well-known success stories. So I'd like to maybe talk about a lesser known success story, which is Emily. So the Emergency Integrated Life-Saving Lanyard, called Emily, is a robotic lifeguard deployed worldwide by Hydronolix, a rural Arizona company. Several of Emily's technologies derive from a 2001 Office of Naval Research STTR project to track whale migration. The tracking system, reconfigured as the Silver Fox unmanned air vehicle, was deployed in 2007 to provide convoy protection to Marines in Iraq, saving 3 lives. The same basic technology package, reconfigured as Emily, is supporting first responders throughout the United States and other nations and saving lives today in the Mediterranean Sea refugee crisis. Hydronolix received $5 million in Navy STTR funding, $7 million in SBIR funding, and $4 million in Phase 3 funding from Navy program offices. And they've generated over $6 million in commercial sales. Their story highlights how SBIR and STTR technology can and do evolve, and also how a combination of SBIR and STTR funding can help pivot the technology in a way that is ultimately responsive to DoD and non-DoD needs. So now let's talk about iRobot. While most people associate iRobot with a hugely successful line of robotic vacuums used for their homes, the company has deep roots with the DoD, originally utilizing the SBIR program to develop robots for the battlefield. iRobot designed and developed throwable robots, complete with cameras and arms, that are used for gathering intelligence and bomb disposal, and were a major part of America's war effort in Iraq. Just recently in 2016, iRobot decided to focus solely on its consumer robotic technologies, thanks largely to the success of its Roomba line and vacuums for the home. So the company sold its entire defense division for $45 million to Arlington Capital Partners of Northern Virginia. The new company, which is set to be renamed, will be the largest independent provider of ground-based robots to DoD, with a significant and growing global presence in the security, industrial, and international defense markets. So again, with the iRobot, it is a story of how there is a technology that's originally seeded with SBIR funding. It finds a way into a program and then pivots to make its way into the consumer side of the market. Next slide. So let's talk about some ways to find non-SBIR and non-STTR funding to further the R&D of your technology. I say further because the one thing everyone already knows is that an SBIR or STTR Phase 1 and Phase 2 is not enough to reach commercialization. I also say further the R&D because most successful SBIR and STTR funded technologies evolve significantly, as we saw in the Emily example, as they make their way into a DoD platform or the commercial market. Again, this point was highlighted in the overview of the Hydronolic story and also the iRobot story. First, I would like to touch on the notion that it's important to connect with PMs and PEOs both before and during your SBIR STTR. Getting started with finding the right PM or PEO can often start with the acquisition liaisons, which are currently available on the DoD SBIR website. You can also connect with PMs and PEOs through primes, and most primes have dedicated personnel to work with small businesses. These types of connections will ultimately enable you to commercialize your technology. Most R&D opportunities, including RIF, which we'll discuss shortly, can be found via broad agency announcements, which are advertised in FedBizOps. I'll talk about these things in a broader sense a little later, but I'd first like to introduce Ann Newman of DARPA to talk about ways to leverage their BAAs to further your R&D. So Ann?
Hi, everybody. I'll start off by saying that I woke up with a bit of a cough this morning, so I'm going to try to keep it together, but pardon me if I go off the rails a little here. Next slide. All right, so starting here on slide 14, I've got a little bit of information about DARPA. I'm specifically going to be speaking about the DARPA BA process outside of the SBIR and STTR program. DARPA itself has 6 technical offices, and within those offices, there are roughly, at any given time, 100 program managers. And our program managers at DARPA are the ones that drive all of our technology and goals and all of the programs. They are temporary government employees. They're invited to come to DARPA for usually 3 to 5 years at a time to pursue their interests that they were studying in industry and academia prior to joining DARPA. So they join DARPA and they will join a technical office where their area of research fits best. And while in that technical office at DARPA, they will be pursuing their own program portfolio, which they will be shaping through broad agency announcements. Their larger programs are also going to be what usually ends up creating these topics that they also write for the SBIR and STTR program. However, the program BAA is where there's going to be the full and open competition with large businesses as well as small businesses. And there's usually significantly more funding for the technology through the large BAA. It's going to be very specific to their technical program goals. The BAA process itself is not an RFP where it doesn't have a common statement of work, so it's not saying, I need this to happen exactly this way and who can bid that the best. It's more of stating a problem and asking for a wide range of solutions that vary from one completely off-the-wall approach to a much more safe one, and there can be multiple awards for that same BAA. It's not just picking the best or the cheapest solution depending on what the program manager is looking for. These BAs usually also have an industry day, which we'll get into in a little bit, but that's another really good opportunity to potentially receive DARPA funding by getting some connections at that industry day. During the industry day, there is a teaming partner opportunity, which is really helpful for creating those relationships with the primes. Even if you're a small business and you are not going to be proposing to a BAA, a lot of the primes are still looking to fill in their team by the time we get to the industry day opportunity. And they are going to be looking for small businesses and consultants and folks that don't necessarily have the same expertise as their current large corporation team does. So there's a lot of teaming opportunities to become a sub, or even if it's completely unrelated to that BAA, to work directly with them on other projects maybe that are ongoing, or to pursue other research opportunities. They're also sometimes receiving task-specific proposals through the BAA. Oftentimes it will have 3, 4, 5 different tasks that can sometimes be proposed to separately, not as an entire BAA proposal. So if you don't have the bandwidth on your end to propose for example, a $10 million 2-year approach for end-to-end solution to the BAA problem, sometimes they will be a separate, for example, a test and evaluation or a feasibility study or certain aspects of the actual BAA that you can propose to separately. So keep that in mind and read up on that when you're reading through the BAAs. The other approach to a BAA at DARPA outside of a specific program BAA is what we call an open office or an office-wide BAA. Each of those technical offices will issue a BAA that's usually good for a year at a time, and it will basically contain all of the technology that office focuses on, and listed as a general, what types of solutions do you have in these areas? And it's their solution to prevent basically unsolicited proposals. So you can, as either a large business or a small business, propose basically anything you want as long as it's going to fall into that technology area of that tech office. You can have a short, 3-month, $150,000 small program idea, or it can be a much larger, couple of year long, hundreds of thousands of dollars solution. And it really can tailor to your particular abilities and the scope that you're able to reach within your personnel. It's a really good way of sort of writing your own solution to a DARPA problem instead of waiting for a specific DARPA program manager problem to come along that matches your capabilities. There are also, because of the limitations of having these DARPA program managers come in for a short period of time, there's not necessarily going to be a specific interest in your specific technology at any time. So this is a good way of introducing potentially a new idea to a program manager that hasn't thought of it, or to get additional angles on a current program that maybe not pursuing something that you're brainstorming on your end. You can, as I say on the slide, you can create your own projects in that sense, but they don't usually have a large teaming assistance section like you'll get in a regular industry day. There sometimes are industry days associated with them, but you're more on your own to find your subcontractors or additional teaming partners to work with. Now, the biggest thing about both of these BA opportunities, but kind of particularly to the office-wide, is you really need to know your audience here. You're going to want to look up on the DARPA.mil website each of the program managers within that tech office, or if it's a program BA, specifically that program manager. You want to find out who's going to be the one that's really going to be evaluating your proposal. What are their needs based on what's on their bio, what's in their program portfolio currently, and where does it seem like they're trying to go with their technology? Now, if you are proposing to the office-wide BAA, I strongly suggest that you reach out and contact those program managers that you have a link to through their bio on the DARPA.mil website. There's a direct contact link on there. And you can start that technical dialogue with them right there, saying, I see that you are, excuse me, folks, I see that you're working in this particular area, and I have a potential solution that goes in this direction. Is that a direction that you're potentially leaning in, or have you considered approaching your technology this way, or even straight up asking, do you have a BAA coming out soon? But having that conversation with them can really help steer you in terms of whether or not you're going to propose, and if you are, what you would want to put in that proposal. Having that conversation is really, really crucial to making sure you're getting it right. Now, it's not going to, of course, guarantee you any sort of award or anything, but it's going to give you a much smaller target to aim for than just reading the content of the BAA. So really have those discussions before you submit anything and tailor it to the direction that program manager appears to be going into. All of these opportunities are going to be available on the DARPA.mil website. I've got a link there in that rectangular box under opportunities. And everything that is not an SBIR or STTR topic will be listed there, as well as on FedBizOps, but they're a little bit easier to digest on the DARPA.mil site. It will also list all of our Industry Day opportunities, and as I said earlier, we'll get into that additionally in a few slides later. Next slide.
Thank you, Anne. So outside of FedBizOps, to find BA opportunities, including those at DARPA, is this, sorry, tripping all over myself today. It's the Defense Innovation Marketplace. You can easily find this by doing a quick search using those terms, but in addition to DoD BAAs, the site provides information regarding new business opportunities such as the Warfighting Lab Incentive Fund, requests for information, requests for proposal, as well as pre-solicitations. You can also find strategic documents that guide acquisitions and R&D investments within the DoD. And I think on the slide somewhere is the URL, but if not, again, you can just do a quick, simple search for Defense Innovation Marketplace and it'll bring it right up. Next slide. There are also wonderful resources across the federal government, specifically for small businesses. Next slide. Here are the links to the small business offices across the federal government. These small business professionals can often help you find connections and opportunities within their respective organizations. Don't worry about writing all these down. A copy of these slides will be made available after the workshop. Next slide. Okay, so let's take a few minutes to discuss the Rapid Innovation Program. I'm sorry, it used to be Rapid Innovation Program, Rapid Innovation Fund, or RIF. Next slide. The Rapid Innovation Fund is designed to transition small business technologies into defense acquisition programs. The program is designed to fund mature technology ideas. About 90% of RIF awards go to small businesses, and the average award is $2.1 million. The goals of the RIF reflect DoD's emphasis on rapid, responsive acquisition and the engagement of small business innovative technologies that resolve operational challenges or address critical national security needs and have a demonstration path into a defense acquisition program, including but not limited to capabilities that accelerate or enhance military capability, reduce the development, acquisition, sustainment, or lifecycle costs of defense acquisition programs or fielded systems, reduce technical risk, or improve the timelines and thoroughness of test and evaluation outcomes. Just a quick note, Ted Bujaski is the DoD Program Administrator for RIF, and a link to his full presentation on the RIF program is linked on this slide. Next slide. So I just covered most of this, but what I would like to add is that RIF is advertised in FedBizOps. It is a BAA, so in order to submit, you must follow the RIF BAA instructions. Next slide. This slide is a simple overview of the current process. However, everyone should be aware that processes can and do change. So be sure to refer to the RIF BAA you're responding to when submitting your proposal. In general, the process is fairly straightforward. You review the component-specific areas of interest and submit a quad chart and white paper. Decisions regarding a full proposal submission is based on review of that white paper and quad chart. And selection for a RIF award is based upon a positive proposal evaluation. Next slide. So this slide provides some data regarding funding through RIF since program implementation. The main takeaways here are that the average award amount is about $2.1 million, but more importantly, nearly 90% of all awards went to small businesses, and nearly 60% of all awards were to current or former SBIR and STTR participants. Next slide. This slide provides a graphic representation of the current RIF process for both white paper review and proposal evaluation. A quick note here for everyone's reference. In general, the RIF BAA opens in late March and closes in mid-May. Next slide. Here are some additional resources regarding RIF, including a Program 101, as well as tips for submitting your idea to the RIF BAA. Before moving on, I just want to emphasize that RIF is a very viable way to move your solution into a DoD program. So in 2017, for instance, RIF had 221 requirements from 22 defense activities, spanning over 50 DoD program offices. I also wanted to add, when you go through Ted Bujeski's slide that's linked previously, there are direct contacts to the RIF POCs at Army, Air Force, and Navy. So if you're interested in RIF, I highly recommend that you connect with those POCs in Army, Air Force, and Navy. Next slide. So before we move on, I'd like to circle back to ways in which you can both learn about program requirements as well as network with PMs and PEOs. One really good way to do this is to participate in industry days. Industry days are typically held in advance of a BAA in order to give potential offers an opportunity to learn more about the requirement as well as network with peers. In a few minutes, I'll turn it over to Ann at DARPA to discuss their industry days. I also want to add that industry days are not just limited to DoD. They're actually utilized throughout the federal government. As a matter of fact, today I'm participating at an industry day for BARDA, which is another federal entity. So they're all over the map. Again, industry days are typically advertised on FedBizOpps at least 30 days in advance. So it's a good idea to check often so you don't miss any opportunities. There are also some increasingly innovative initiatives happening around DoD. Things like SoftWorks, AFWorks, the Army Open Campus Initiative, the Navy Innovation Cell, Velocity Lab within the Naval Surface Warfare Center, and the Army Futures Command, to name a few. You'll hear from a representative from SoftWorks today, but if you're not aware of some of these other initiatives and programs like DIUX, I highly encourage you to look into them and the unique opportunities that you can take advantage of within them. And along with the slides, you guys at some point will also get a transcript. So if you didn't 100% catch everything that I blurted out, you'll be able to look it up later, or just feel free to contact me through the DoD SBIR STTR team. I'd also like to add that acquisition planning is an exceptionally complex and formally constricted process within DoD. You almost need formal education in working with PMs and PEOs in the acquisition community in order to figure it all out. And even then, it's a behemoth. So it would behoove you to use all the resources I've mentioned today, as well as the others that you'll get from other panelists, as well as networking opportunities at conferences with your fellow small business peers, to ensure that you are developing a solution that has a viable path to commercialization, particularly if DoD is one of your target customers. So use all of your contacts, keep making contacts, network often. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ann to close out this topic on industry days. Thank you, everyone.
Hello again. So the DARPA Industry Day process, it can sometimes be called Industry Day, and sometimes it's called a Proposer's Day. They're interchangeable, and it just depends on which tech office in DARPA is releasing the announcement. And again, those announcements will be listed on the opportunities portion of the DARPA.mil website, along with all the BAAs. So our industry days are usually held here at DARPA in Arlington, Virginia. Occasionally we'll have a virtual industry day, but more often than not, they're actually in-person events here at DARPA. They are going to be usually one full day, and a portion of the day will be basically the program manager describing the BAA that's going to be coming out or has come out. We try to time them to within a week of the release of the BAA. And the program manager will give a little bit more perspective on their plan and the program beyond just what's in the actual text of the BAA the whole announcement. They'll give a little bit more information on the direction they want this program to eventually go in, what they've done so far up until this point, if there's been any previous phases of this program. They'll also sometimes, if there has been a previous phase of the program, have one of the primes from that phase giving a presentation on what technology was achieved during that and where things stand now. And then there'll also oftentimes be presentations by the end user. Somebody from Army, Navy, Air Force usually is going to be involved in this so that it is going to be something they actually want when it's done. DARPA tries to have that person, that customer in mind from the very beginning of a program so that once something is developed, it actually has a place to go, as opposed to just sort of sitting there in, maybe not being useful for the DoD. So you'll usually get a presentation from one of the services about what they intend to do with this technology, and that can also help drive proposals in the right direction. And I mentioned earlier that we have teaming opportunities usually during this time frame. There will be a one-on-one opportunity to speak with the program manager, and during that time frame where the individual organizations are having their 10, 15, 20-minute one-on-one meetings with the program managers, the opportunities for everybody else attending is to actually network, to discuss what your approach, what your technology strong points would be, so that you can potentially find teaming partners. It is very rare to have an award made at DARPA that is just to one prime and nobody else. It's almost a guarantee that there are going to be multiple teaming partners on that effort to get a really well-rounded technological approach and to have risk mitigation by different ideas and different personnel strong suits. So it's really important to make sure that you have an idea in mind of where you can fit in with another team or know what's missing from your team if you're thinking about proposing to a DARPA BAA. That way you can use these opportunities to really help fill in your gaps or promote yourself. And again, I did mention that even if you have no intention of actually proposing to the BAA that you're attending the industry day for, all of the folks that are going to be proposing to that BAA are very likely in that room, and therefore the ones that are going to end up winning that award. They may have other projects that are related to this that you would fit really well in with, and it's just a really good business networking opportunity just as a baseline going in on that. Even if it's unrelated to the actual DARPA project that's going to go on later. They all work in that field. They have a lot of openings. I'm trying not to trip over my words here. They have a lot of opportunities within their organizations on projects that they're working on, technologies that they're going to be pursuing, and other opportunities that might be a perfect fit for you or your team to be able to move forward with that company in a relationship in the future. So that's all I have about DARPA BAAs. Again, those are all going to be announced on the DARPA.mil website under opportunities, as well as on FedBizOps, and they're called special notices from DARPA. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ann, for that comprehensive information. So just one quick question that came through is, when is the RIF BA out? And it's around mid-February, but definitely keep an eye on fbo.gov. Once again, that's fbo.gov to see when that BA will be released. And since we've talked about BA outside of RIF and have covered RIF in great detail, we're going to move forward with our presentation. We'll address any Phase 3 and RIF questions at the end of our presentation. And one other reminder is there will be a Q&A released within 30 days of this presentation. So we also encourage you to review that transcript. All right, so next we're going to reintroduce Dr. Michael Weatherly from C5BDI. Dr. Weatherly is going to discuss non-traditional contracting and how his company supports commercialization. His company has helped small businesses navigate the waters of Phase 3, and he will provide context and best practices. Next slide, please. In the next slide. There we go. All right, Dr. Weatherly.
Hey, everybody. Yep. Thank you very much. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So I'll try to keep it pretty much high level on kind of who we are and what we do and how we support both members in this equation, being government and industry. And I really only have a couple slides really to go through, but I was going to save most of my time for the end for Q&A because I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions on this topic. But at the end of the day, my company, like I mentioned at the beginning, is a consulting company. We sit between industry and government to help facilitate what we call non-traditional contracting, or NTCs, and what we utilize mainly is other transaction authority and SBIR Phase 3. So this whole conversation today is definitely in our sweet spot. I'll go over kind of a couple high-level tips today, and then I know there's a lot of interest in OTAs, and I'm going to be turning it over to Mike here in a minute, the other Mike. But at the end of the day, our mission and what we're trying to accomplish and do is to, I like to say, completely overhaul the way the government does federal contracting. And usually when government people hear that, they kind of laugh, and so does industry. But then when they hear what we've been able to do and accomplish in a year and a half, they kind of sit back a little bit and look at us in a different way. So a little bit of history on our company. We just started last year. At the beginning of last year, January 1st, we had one client and one employee. And like I mentioned at the beginning, when I first introduced myself, we've had a crazy fun run here in just a year and a half. We're up to over 30 clients now, most of those here in the U.S., but we also have some international clients that we support as well that we have helped win SBIR, STTR awards. So a German-based company. We work with some folks in Lithuania as well that have offices in Denmark. And so mainly what we utilize is the SBIR and the OTA, because there's a lot of flexibility in the contracting solution, and it's not just about your technology. What we tell a lot of people is, we know you love your baby. Your baby's cute, but it's time for that baby to grow up and get a job and make some money. So there's a lot of babies running around in the SBIR database. There's almost a couple 100,000, I think, dating back to 1982. And the secret is to try to get it to Phase 3, and that's really where we come in as a company and help government navigate the waters of SBIR Phase 3 and OTA and CRADAs and PIAs, and there's all kinds of other contracting mechanisms, and then help industry get their technology in front of the right government customers. And so that's kind of the services that my company provides. Next slide. So at a high level, here's kind of our work and our differentiators. I already kind of mentioned that we focus on OTAs and SBIRs. Like I mentioned, we've already won over $250 million in work for the clients we have. We have over $1 billion in awarded ceiling value that we could put money on contract. We're trying to set up $50 million Phase 3s this year, so 50/50s, and we've already got a couple out of the gate in the new FY, so we're already on the way to the 50. Our business approach and consulting approach is you get a team. So we went from the one person a year ago, we're up over 13 now, and we have about 25 to 50 anytime kind of part-time employees that come and go to support the industry partners we work with and or the government customer. We have 0 contracts with the federal government. The government tries to hire us all the time, and we always say no, thank you. We don't want to be a contractor. We leave that up to you guys. But we really mix traditional and non-traditional business development concepts. I mean, this is you've heard this before, but the secret is there's really no secret. It's all about hustling. It's about networking, getting out there, meeting the right people. It's not who you know, it's who you grow. And so, taking those contacts and turning them into contracts. And, I think another thing, going back to the getting stuck on the technology you have, what a lot of people forget is that in Phase 3, I'm sure you've heard this before, for you Phase 1, 2 type folks, it's derives from, extends, or logically concludes efforts from Phase 1 and 2, which means just because you did it for the Navy and it was for one specific thing or one specific customer task or requirement doesn't mean you can't take that technology, software product, new process, whatever it is, and could do something for the Air Force or the Marines or whoever. And so the easier that you can grasp that concept of taking what you developed in Phase 1 and 2 and then finding other applications for it in the DoD and in the commercial space, you're going to be a lot more successful if you can do that. That literally is the secret to Phase 3. And nobody's just going to give you a Phase 3. You got to go out there and get it. You got to go beat the streets, go out there and meet people, network, get your ideas, learn about new upcoming requirements, and meet the people with money, which is the government customers, and with requirements, and get your ideas in front of those government customers. And that is truly how you will be successful. Another kind of key piece is, going back to all those babies running around in the SBIR.gov database, there's a whole bunch of puzzle pieces out there. And the government customers, when they go try to look at it, it just looks like a bunch of puzzle pieces. So you, as an industry person, need to try to go find other puzzle pieces that help you make an entire puzzle for the government customer. So reach out to other industry partners that complement you and your skill sets, and then collectively bring a solution together to the government. In most cases, we're talking about small businesses here. Who doesn't love a small business team coming forward with a solution that's going to meet the government customer's needs? So if you can do that, that's also going to give you a better chance to be successful. Next slide. So non-traditional contracting, go ahead, next slide. As I mentioned, OTAs and SBIRs, that's really where we focus. OTAs, it's a hot topic now. They've been around for a really long time. Everybody says it's a new contracting mechanism. They've been around since the 50s. It's nothing new about it. Same thing with SBIR. There's the DoD Guide to Prototypes, which is noted here on this slide. If you're not familiar with that document, I highly encourage you to Google that and look that document up. The OTAs are a great way for you to get in touch with government customers and have a conversation outside of a traditional procurement type process where you can't talk to government about the requirements and what they're looking for and budget and things like that, and weave in your SBIR technology to be part of the solution. So that is the OTA is another good way, and it's the hot topic right now. So it's a great way for you to get in front of a government customer and help them use this contracting strategy to help them meet their needs. And so I'm going to stop right there because I know there's a whole bunch of questions that are probably going to come just from the short couple slides I had. And I'm going to turn it over to the resident OTA expert, the other Mike. So appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jason.
All right, Mike Pansky.
Hi, everyone. All right, so let's go to the next slide and just kind of talk about some of the history. But I think, very high level, you can read this. I don't need to read to the slide. Let's just talk about really sort of when can you use an OTA, because I think a lot of the questions that are already stemming up and will continue on here is about, taking SBIR technology and then applying that to the other transaction authorities and some of these more rapid prototyping programs. So really the main area is when there's at least one non-traditional defense contractor, so that's not on a CAS compliant contract, under $7.5 million within the last year, or a nonprofit research institution. So this is a new addition actually recently within the last year that a nonprofit research institution qualifies to participate to a significant extent in the prototyping project. Now, that being said, the larger CAS-compliant defense contractors can participate in OTAs, but they must meet one of the following the two circumstances. So at least a third of the total cost of that prototyping OTA must be paid out of funds provided by that larger entity. And so if you think of it as almost the matching funds associated, this is where on the RIF program, for example, those approximately, I believe it was 10% that aren't small businesses, they actually have matching funds through internal research and development or some sort of matching funds equivalent. And then lastly, or the second point to that is that a senior procurement executive or an SAE for the agency can actually determine and write an exception to the OTA to justify the use of that contract vehicle to expedite. And so we can get into the intricacies of, some of the more recent findings with the programs around like the Ring Clouds of the world and some of the latest actions happening there. But I think the history playing into the simple definition of what is a non-traditional defense contractor gives us a really good understanding as to how you can take your technology to the federal government. And so these OTs, while we'll talk about some of the individual programs, for example, the RIF, through DIU, through Silicon Valley Innovation Program and DHS and DARPA, the main pass-through for OT contracts are going to come through consortia. So next slide. What we've provided here, and this is actually as of June 2018, is what I believe to be a sort of comprehensive list. Now, there's new consortia getting added all the time, some with contract vehicles, some without, and how they are managed here. So try to put together a nice list for the team and everybody on the call and that wasn't able to participate today to say, where do we target, whether by customer or by capability, to start to understand what networks to join. And so the basic premise of an OT consortia is a pay to get access or to obtain access with most to opportunity solicitations, if you will, from their government customer. And they're treated almost as a pass-through to help support the process associated with that contract vehicle. And so the majority of these OTs are actually managed by consortium management firms, and the largest ones being like an ATI, consortium management group, national security technology accelerators, system of systems that also plays into that. So there are about four to five main consortia, and they manage a multitude of different consortium that fall under those consortium management groups. So we try to also list the agencies that fall into there. So I think we'll address a lot of the questions associated with these at the end, and we can talk about potentially where the funding goes, and then also some of the intricacies to each of these different groups. But I think we're going to move on right now to more venture capital focus. So if we can go next slide. And then we'll jump in one more. I'll have Jason give a brief intro into this if we want. Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mike Pansky, and thank you, Dr. Michael Weatherly. At this time, I'm going to turn the forum over to Philip Reeves, who's going to lead venture capital segment of our workshop. Phil?
Great, thanks, Jason. So I'm really excited about today's piece of venture capital. We've gotten a ton of questions about VC funding and what small business need to consider. So today we're really happy to have Mike with us, who you just heard. He has a lot of insight about the VC space. And so the goal of this presentation is to give you a good overview of the venture capital process and address many of the questions that have come our way, from identifying the right type of capital, through having a good pitch meeting, and ultimately what to do after you close. And so with that, I'll turn over to Mike to get us started.
I'm back that quick. So I'll jump in first and foremost, talk about Intern, which is now the commercial offering of ByteCube. There's actually a free platform out there to support startups in finding SBIR opportunities and RIF, other OTAs, all within a sort of simplified interface, much like a FedBizOps that exists for most of these sort of rapid early stage funding vehicles. But I think one of the things that I wanted to express, and again, you can read through the slides here, is that, I have a background in seeing SBIR technology mature from phase 1 through phase 3, and not only on the investment and acquisition side of those technologies, but then the commercialization side of a lot of those, and understanding the dynamics and maybe the dichotomy between the pitch that you make for SBIR and in the commercial market, and trying to bring those two into a cohesive sort of strategy. And so this is a little bit about my background, most recently with the ByteCube team, and now an investor in the Kairos K50, as well as Third Horizons. That's not Horizons Ventures, which is backed by a Chinese entity, and I'll tell you about that. It's Third Horizons as well. So let's jump into the next slide, and I'll kind of talk and start the VC side. So I think this is, something that in bridging, we got to go, let's go forward one. There we go. This is a slide that's been around for a couple of years, and a lot of the presentations that I do, I really like to start with this, because this is essentially the pitch between taking government technology and relating it to a commercial venture capitalist. And the reason why I say that is because oftentimes, it's very hard to represent what you're taking out of a lab and really bringing it to light as to what a VC is going to care about. And so the two main areas, on the X and Y axis here is going to be really understanding market and technology risk. And the value of these programs that we have out of the government, being this sort of non-dilutive capital, the rapid prototyping funds, are that they're going to decrease a lot of your technology risk and market risk, but that the government is willing to accept that technology risk. This is something that I would like, everybody on the line to really sort of resonate with, is that, these types of funds are going to bring down your tech risk. And subsequently, what that's going to offer to you is to position your business pitch really around the market risk associated with execution, right? Why commercialization is so important to the SBIR program is because you want to bring down that market risk to associate that to a VC. And so just one of the things that I'll mention is that, corporate venture capital, corporations, commercial VCs, they're going to be willing to accept a little bit of market risk, because that's something that can actually be controlled. Technology risk is a real challenge, and some corporations can help with technology risk, but that's where the government is extremely important here. And so I tried to bucket the different types of funding available to a startup in the four quadrants there, using the sort of thought process of like a Gartner matrix to show where the funding cycle exists, where the innovation funnel exists to getting to that sort of COTS technology, and where on the product curve or the company curve you're going to be looking for those different types of funding and making that pitch. And while this isn't all encompassing, we've seen venture capital go early stage at ideation. You also see it where they don't hit until sort of later beyond where you've got product market fit. I would say this is a good sort of overview of how those all play in the sandbox. And so moving on from the high level about the sort of venture capital, let's actually talk about, to the next slide, what is venture capital. Most basic form, venture capital is going to be that financing for high growth individuals or for companies in exchange for either an equity ownership or some sort of immediate financial gain. And that's more around the debt financing. And so, as we look, we're going to take sort of a counterintuitive approach here, and we're going to start on the right side to talk about some of the typical investors that you might see. So really starting with the 3 Fs, like say the family, friends, and fools, all the way down to some of the CVCs, investment banking, private equity. As you move downstream, those are going to be really around the fund sizes that we'll talk about. So looking from typical investor, now let's talk about their focus, because again, you can read this as we're going along, but you're going to primarily encounter sort of 4 types of groups. I mentioned the 3 Fs. Their focus is really going to be on the founder. They're going to love you. That's what you're going to try and hit home with those types of investors is you, your vision, your long-term strategies. You have to sell them, I believe, on you as a founder or the team that you have in place, the group of founders. Moving down the line, if you move out of the 3 Fs down towards the sort of deeper investment, you're going to get the angel investors. These are going to be a lot of high net worth individuals. And now that model's opened up, and I'll talk about some of the new types of angel investing that exists out there, really what you're going to focus on is you're going to focus on the feeling that the business gives them. They've got to love not only you, but they now have to love what you're doing, right? They have to love the story. And I like to craft the pitch is that, and I'll talk about this a lot today, and maybe one thing as a takeaway, they have to see you as a line and not a dot. And so I'm going to bring that up a couple times, and hopefully that one is the sort of key takeaway on the venture investment side. And so as we move down from angels, now you're talking more of your traditional venture capitalists. What are they going to care about? They're going to love making money. Of course, everybody's going to love making money, but you're going to have to position your focus not only on them loving you and the business prospect of what you're doing, but you have to show them the financial return that fits within the horizons of their more discriminate funds that they have and allocated in mandates and so forth. And then lastly, the type of groups that exist out there are really around the corporate and private equity, maybe the investment banking side, and really their focus is going to be around fit. When you're finding these types of investors, you're really going to be looking for that business fit for their organizations. And so we've now come to the left. Now let's jump back to the right here and kind of talk about how, again, you need to look at the investment size of those types of groups, where your business is at, and also what that means to a pitch. And so, again, these numbers hit very high level to address what could potentially be. But again, there's extraneous circumstances with all of this where an angel investor may do follow-on that broadly extends beyond what this typical investment size. But I would like to say this captures the majority of deals that fall under that area. And so what I'll say here, as we're talking from like an angel perspective, if they're going to invest 25 to 500K in your business and they have greater than $1 million in assets, well, let's just think about that for a second. If they have to invest, a portion of their funds to get a return that then keeps them going, what does that look like from an ownership structure? And so when you look at, and we'll talk about fund mandates, you want to be considering and understand and look at the VC perspective, because again, as a founder, I understand that we believe everything's worth a really large amount and the investor is going to try and get it for the right deal. But you have to also understand the incentives that are aligned with them putting that capital into the business, which I will reiterate that the fantastic part of the SBIR program and these rapid prototyping contracts is the non-dilutive factor to it, and how it does help accelerate some of that market risk or the technology risk that the venture capitalist is going to look for to drive that value. So let's go to the next slide. We know, sort of what is venture capital and what we're going to be looking for as far as the funds. How do we sort of find this? And so clearly, the one go-to for everything, go to Google. right? You're going to be looking for the types of investors. What I would say is when you're starting your search, you're going to want to start with looking at investors in your immediate vicinity, mostly because investors like to invest in their community. I think a lot of this carries back to, building up the infrastructure in the local economies, but then there's also, larger firms, depending on the stage of the company, that aren't geographically dense within their investments. So I would say you start with the Google, incorporate Crunchbase and AngelList into your Google search. So for example, you're going to look up a fund of an investor within the Arlington region, find that investor and search them on Crunchbase or AngelList. See the companies that they've invested in. This is a free way to get out of it. And also news sources. I think these press releases are going to give you a lot of insight as to individuals, incubators, accelerators making a presence within your local area that you can begin to target. And oftentimes they put contact info in there as well. So starting with the free sources, now let's move down to some of the paid sources, and we can talk about these and some of the dynamics of each at the end. The first and foremost, I think, these would probably be the industry de factos for looking at traditional venture capital. Crunchbase is going to give you a nice overview of the funds, potentially the individuals, and the high-level investments in the companies. The problem that you're going to run into, and this is where the intern platform plays in our enterprise, was that it has to be connected to government solicitations, government funding and awards, and then additionally looking at, for example, budget line items, published research, patent data. This is the type of stuff where I think intern bridges the gap, and where our initial mission is to bridge the gap between that commercial venture investment, as I had talked about before, and what the government is actually funding. And then lastly, another paid platform, which is really fantastic when you want to look at sort of what are the assets under management for the fund, what's the dry powder, which is the funds left available after they've invested in the companies. A lot of times you can do this through your own due diligence, but this is very nice to have as a feature in a platform, or to be able to look at, SEC Edgar filings, to look at investments, who sits on the board. Really good contact info, like a PitchBook will associate it because of the dynamics of their marketplace. They'll associate it to LinkedIn profiles. Again, I think this is a lot of the stuff that you can obtain through free searches, but it's available in a tool. And I think this plays very well into the social media aspect, because these days, a lot of the venture investors, the commercial venture investors, will be very active on social media. So this is LinkedIn, Twitter, AngelList. You're going to find those individuals through those different sort of public mediums and engage with them. What I would suggest is, get in touch. But what I would advise against is sending cold connection requests. This just doesn't happen effectively. I get, dozens of LinkedIn requests with no sort of real overview or no bridging of the gap between, second or third connections on a LinkedIn, for example. So I don't think that these oftentimes get the type of attention that, a founder will seek. I know when I tried this outreach personally, as I was doing the startup, it wasn't necessarily as effective as finding that second or third connection, that intermediary that could provide that nice warmer intro. And I'll talk about, the dynamics of that in emails and so forth. But I think as you engage on social media, one of the notes, to really keep out on here is that if you must send a connection, put less than 300 characters that clearly and concisely explains what you have, what you're seeking, and how to discuss further. Again, give them a teaser, before we get into sort of targeting the right venture capital or what that pitch looks like. Give them a teaser. If they're going to be interested within 300 characters, you're going to get them on the hook to get that pitch going forward. But I would say, first and foremost, try for a warm intro. That being said, back to the point on following and engaging, some of the largest investors, that have, early stage in the Ubers and Robinhood and Thumbtack, if you've ever heard of any of these, I think everybody has on the Uber side. One of their initial angel investors, I use it as a good example, Jason Calacanis, he responds on Twitter and Instagram all the time to people. He's out there with his book promoting that, but he definitely responds and engaging with those individuals and waiting for the right time. In fact, recently, I think a couple of weeks ago, as an anecdote, he had opened it up to founders that if they could solve a challenge on a new social media platform, and again, not particularly applicable to our DoD side, but these types of investors exist out there. They're willing to accept ideas in a more open forum. And then lastly, moving off the social media and the digital, I would say the physical sort of ways to find a venture capitalist. There are local meetups everywhere. Your universities have pitch days. There are local conferences. I don't find that going to the big expensive conferences and running around with a one-pager or, sort of flogging the next great idea is oftentimes the best route. Because again, you have to imagine that these VCs are getting pitched by dozens, if not over 100 companies at the same time. And so it tends to get lost in the message there. And so focus on, some of the local conferences that can benefit you immediately, but that is an opportunity there. Lastly, the incubators and accelerators that exist within your area. Again, using the digital resources, find those local incubators at the university or offsite and the accelerators to help pitch your message. And so moving on from sort of where to find it, now let's talk about how engaging. And so next slide. Some of the rules to follow. I say, hit these top 7 points and you should be all right. First, let's start with the message. You want to make sure that you've addressed the questions and understanding their fund. Again, as you're going to engage, and we'll talk about this in the next slide, you need to understand what they're looking for in their fund. If they've only invested in drone companies in the past and you pitch them on something related to natural language processing, you're probably not going to get generally a positive response. Now, if you engage in that 300-character communication and say, hey, I see your fund consists of drone companies. We have a technology that's been funded through SBIR within this space and actually fits your investment criteria based on the type of past investments you made, would love to follow up with you. I think that's more of a compelling pitch when you're understanding what their needs are and relaying that across in that initial intro. And so again, on these intros, I'll reiterate, if possible, warm intros are always the best. Look for a known and trusted contact. If you're not engaging directly with them through one of these social channels or via email, look for somebody that does, that comments or that they respond back to, and ask for an intro. It's definitely going to help your odds there. And then once you've gotten that intro, what does the pitch look like? Craft a personalized narrative. Nobody wants to see the 500-character, here's what we do and why we're so great. What they want to see is how you're so amazing and how it's going to benefit me as a VC and fit within my sort of investment criteria. Everybody wants to feel like they're special, especially on the VC side. We want to feel like we're getting the right pitch to us because deal flow and deal volume are not a challenge. The right deal flow is going to be the challenge. And so if you can craft that sort of personalized narrative to the VC, again, you're improving your odds exponentially. I'll say this now and I'll bring it up later, projections. If it's $1 billion market, if it's a $10 billion market, if it's a $10 trillion market, better be real and better be backed up by facts. This is in pitches, in follow-on, in everything you do, projections, knowing the numbers, understanding the market opportunity, because most of these people are going to be very refined. And at some point in the due diligence process, they're going to question that. And so you're going to want to be able to reaffirm that. I see a lot of cold pitches that say, we've got a technology with $500 million in phase 3 follow-on, and we already know it's going to happen. Yeah, down the line, when I go and talk to the PMs on those types of programs and the 2 and 3 stars that are sitting on the board of those companies, I can tell you that those phase 3 dollars seem to dwindle down from what they're initially sort of set out for, or what that program of record actually looks like when they've been de-obbed funds in the out years. And so really understanding the narrative and the projections is going to be really valuable. Confidentiality. What you're doing for the federal government on these SBIR programs, there's no doubt it's special, but never lead with an NDA. As you get down the line and as you sort of bridge the gap from the initial pitch, do not say, I'm only willing to talk about this under an NDA, because again, you have to imagine that these individuals are going to get pitched from many companies, and there may be something high level that crosses the path, especially if they have an investment within their portfolio that may be very similar. And so what I like to say is never lead with an NDA, just share what you feel comfortable disclosing, sort of at the onslaught of that engagement. And so again, tone. I like to say, VCs that are founders, they know passion. They know passion about their product and about their companies, but don't necessarily be sort of unnaturally aggressive within that pitch or sort of overselling the potential opportunity. Make sure it's real, because if it's real and they can sense that passion from you, you're more likely to get a response. And then lastly, I would say on the supporting info, again, this is talking just when engaging initially. When you're providing supporting info, don't attach a deck or any of those detailed info unless they really ask for it. I have received quad charts before. It's an effective tool within the government if you're pitching a high level. On the commercial venture side, I wouldn't say so much, right? Because you're going to hook them with that 300-character statement, and then they're going to want to know way more questions than what you're going to give them in the quad chart. And so I think the quad chart oftentimes on the venture side leads to more confusion because you're only allowed to give them so much to entice them. And a lot of their incentive is going to be around asking more of those probing questions, like we'll talk about in the pitch that you're going to have. So let's go to the next slide. And so we talk about engaging, but here's the 4 main areas and specifically info that you're going to want to know. And I'll brush through this fairly quickly, but you're going to want to have aligned by looking at their sources, looking at the sort of primary modes of information via the web, via their published information out there that you're going to want to have down before you engage with them. And so targeting the right VC, what type of fund? What is their business focus? Again, are they investing in drone companies? Talk about their verticals. Is it B2B? Is it only government investment? Is it tied to just emergency medical support services? I mean, funds are very explicit within their mandate of what are the verticals, what are the stages that they invest in, and then also when you look at a fund, who is the point of contact within that fund, right? Because you're going to have principals, you're going to have LLCs that are, you're going to have supporting fund managers that have experience in different spaces. So do they have experience within your background, one of the partners that you may want to target? Do they have potential conflicts of interest? I actually fell into this plight of pitching my technology to a company or to an individual within a larger fund that had an investment in a similar commercial space that could have carried over at one point. And it took me actually researching that fund after the initial email intro to understand why they were so interested in my business, is that they actually had multiple funding rounds within this other company. And so I've made that mistake. So I can explain from experience there. And then looking at that, what is their available capital? So we'll talk in the next slide about what are the assets under management of that fund, right? How much do they have to invest with? But there's dry powder in that, which is how much is left after they've already invested. If they've put out $5 million out of their $10 million fund, well, then they only have $5 million left in what's called quote unquote dry powder that's out there. And that's where tools, like a pitch book can help you start to understand what's available in the fund. But then through sort of that primary research on Google and Edgar filings, you can come up with that yourself. So moving from point of contact, what is the value? You want to have a notion in your mind before engaging with them. What is their immediate value? Is it cash? Is it understanding? Is it just simply help? Oftentimes I've seen that VCs start as answering help to a founder, and subsequently down the road, they end up investing. Again, they're looking at a line and not a dot. If you engage with them one time, they only have a frame of reference of one experience with you, which is not to be said if you go and have a good email exchange over the course of 6 months and they're tracking progress, well, they might be more inclined to then want to invest. And so what is their immediate value? What's the long-term value that they could potentially provide to you? And then what is their past performance? We'll talk about what past performance means as far as when you're sort of getting the right venture capital. But it's something to consider when you're starting to engage with them. I think we need to go back. There we go. And then lastly, just what's the best way to get in touch? Again, on the engagement side, you want that intro. The intro is to get a pitch. The pitch is to get a deal. So that is the follow-on for each of them. So now let's go to the next slide, and we'll jump into sort of targeting that right VC before you get to the engagement stage. So again, what is their typical investment that they're going to provide? AUM, what do they have in assets under management? This is going to help you focus as to are you looking at the right fund that has available funds left? Oftentimes, VCs will get very vague about this. Well, our one fund is closing now. We may have another follow-on fund come back to us. But again, it might not fit within your mandate. So understanding the AUM there is going to be very important. Look at the deals for any specific partners that you're going to try and engage with. Who do they have experience with, right? This goes back to the portfolio companies that they may be privy to. Expertise, what's their track record? not only of the fund, but of the partner as well. This is interesting because the expertise plays into past performance. I think that, if you look at any sort of traditional stock picking, past performance is not indicative of future returns. Well, that's a yes and no, right? It's not guaranteed, but within the commercial venture investment, FOMO is real. Fear of missing out, that's a good one to know. And if they look at investors that have invested in Uber or Facebook or Twitter or any of the products of the past that have gone to the multi-billion-dollar unicorn stage, people are gonna want to jump in with those investors. And imagine if you have one of those on your board. This is a prime example of thinking like an In-Q-Tel. In-Q-Tel is almost a badge of honor within the IC community to show that In-Q-Tel is invested in your organization. And so what I like to say there is success begets success in the venture capital side. Now, it doesn't beget execution. There's nothing to say that this helps the past performance or the money itself will help with execution. That being said, it does beget, I think, further success on raising venture capital. Next, again, I think we've talked about this point on the portfolio side. Any competitive or complementary technologies, they're going to want to see how you could potentially bring value to their other portfolio companies as well. So understanding that is going to be really important. What is their approach? Do they only do tag-along investment, only lead? Do they require follow-on funds? Are they going to require matching funds? Can you provide to them the narrative? And again, this comes into the message of traction with corporate partners that are willing to invest or pilot programs. So I think these two, your approach and your message, really have to hit a narrative that are going to hit home with that fund. So next slide. So we've talked about the types of investors that exist out there, where to potentially find them. I'm going to run through this very quickly. You can go to these slides. There's a new market dynamic in equity crowdfunding. I personally will not spend a lot of time on this because this is, it exists out there. In the past, prior to rules changing in 2016, high net worth individuals were those with over $1 million in assets, greater than 200,000, I believe it is, in income that could invest in startups. Now it's sort of democratized into, on some of these platforms, you can throw $1,000 into a startup. And so some of the dynamics there, it provides some diversity risk when raising capital. It does give you a broader network to getting it out. Think of like a Kickstarter, but for equity. One of the negatives that I'll say, or two negatives that I'll say to getting that diverse investment, and these are just the top four. You can Google equity crowdfunding, debt crowdfunding, it all exists. The two big negatives that I'll say is it provides too many cooks in the kitchen, right? I hate to speak in analogies, but too many cooks in the kitchen. There's oftentimes when it comes to reporting requirements and follow-on investment, this isn't going to be your best path, right? You have to think about long-term, what does this mean for your business when you need to go raise another round or when you try to go sell your business? While it may be an easier path to capital, it might not be the most effective or efficient means to doing that when you're thinking down the road. So yeah, next slide. So now we're on how to pitch. We want to approach the pitch. Let's talk about, sort of the three stages, right? Approaching the pitch, during the pitch, trying to get that sort of deal, and then post-presentation. So this is going to be the on-site. Less is more, right? When you're approaching the 300 characters, less is more. Breathe and relax. As I have talked in the past and have been on the opposite side of the pitch on both sides, we tend to get that this is the only source of funding in the world and these are the only individuals that do it. They're just like everyone else. They just happen to, instead of going to work and investing and inventing some of the best technology in the world for the federal government, they happen to be investing in some of the maybe not best technologies, but hopefully your technology. And so just relax. I mean, I think what you say is oftentimes not as important as how you say it. And so being relaxed and approaching the pitch in the right sort of frame of mindset is going to be entirely important. Again, you have an elevator, you have 300 characters, you have that one email or the follow-on phone call to get those slides and to get in front of an individual via, a web meeting or an in-person meeting to sell them on your 10 or so slides. And when you approach this, keep it simple. This is what I'd like to say, and I'll jump ahead on the during the pitch, but keeping it simple, what does it mean? Sell this idea, sell the market, sell everything. If you can explain it like you're explaining to your grandmother how this product works and they can explain it back, you've nailed it. You've nailed it perfectly. That it should be as simple as explaining it to an older family member. Maybe there's some other fun anecdotes you want to bring up. I don't know if I have enough time, but maybe during Q&A I'll mention some of those for my personal ones. But during the pitch, provide good background. With all of us that love DOD and federal funding, we speak in acronyms, we speak in initialisms. Don't use them. If you do, explain them, right? FOMO, explain fear of missing out if you have to. I brought up about the selling like you're selling to your grandmother. I don't use analogies, but I'll say if you're going to use them sparingly. Don't get lost, unless it reaffirms a point that you're trying to make. Eye contact and engaging. Again, this is going to come down to when you're pitching an investor, they're going to be looking first and foremost at you. While their incentives are always down, they're going to be looking first and foremost at you. So be engaging, set that eye contact during the pitch. Right? These are just high levels to think about when making that pitch. Post-presentation. I think this is something that's extremely important. If it's not as important, it might be even greater than the pitch that you make, is the Q&A session after, the follow-on, because you get to set the tone with those individuals. So as you're setting the tone, prep a couple questions that you'd like them to ask. If you're doing a very high-level quick pitch, anywhere from 15 minutes, maybe, they'll give you an hour. I highly doubt it. But if you're doing a 15-minute pitch, imagine Shark Tank, you're going to set the tone for their types of questions. So have those questions ready. Wow, I explained the financials of my business to you, but I'd love to dive in deeper into that. And I have a supporting slide here. Here's the market opportunity that I addressed. Here's the assumptions that went into that. I think these are the ideas where you get to set the tone. You know the types of questions that they're going to ask. They're going to ask about the market. They're going to ask about your financials, and they're going to ask about why you. If you can cover those main three areas, you've already set yourself up for success in the Q&A. If they do have questions after you get through those, or even before you get to your three main points, listen. Listen to exactly the question that was asked and answer that question directly. Yes, no, and then elaborate. I have been to so many pitch sessions where you're in the mode, you're so excited, you think you understand what the VC's asking, or maybe they're not understanding your pitch and their question is off and you need to reframe it. Make sure that you understand the question first and foremost, because that is almost immediately discrediting if they ask you a question and it looks like you're dancing around it or that you may not interpret it correctly. So make sure to address those. And then lastly, I think this is an absolute fact, know your numbers. Know your numbers, know your numbers, know your numbers. They talk about it on Shark Tank. I think every VC in the world will reiterate it. Probably the only good thing that comes out of that show, know your numbers. If you don't know an answer, buy time. An example. Wow, that's a great question. Let me think about that. 1, 2, 3. Give yourself some time to either reframe it or say, you know what? I'd love to get back to you. Let me get some supporting slides on that. Know your numbers. If you don't know it, buy some time. If you can't buy some time in the room and come up with a good, valid response that addresses the direct question, always come back to it and say, hey, let's take that offline. I'd be happy to provide some follow-up to that. So next slide. We've talked about how to engage, leading into that pitch. Let's talk about a pitch deck format. This is not an end-all, be-all. If you Google pitch decks for some of the biggest companies in the world, you'll see a broad range. The pitch deck for everything from the 3 Fs, family, friends, fools, is very different from the pitch deck to angel investors, which is wildly different from the pitch deck that you're going to give to VCs or downstream to corporate venture capital, private equity. What I'll say is if you can address these 10 main points, they pretty much give you the overview of what you'll need to address for all the other slides that may be applicable. I don't want to spend too much time on this just because there's ins and outs to all the different pitches that exist. So, these might not be applicable to what the investor cares about, but overarching, these are going to be the areas. You're going to want to focus on an intro, name, title, email, tag. Simple. Again, keep it simple. Problem. What is your customer profile? Whether it's DOD, non-DOD, government, civilian, you name it, in the commercial, what is the customer profile and what is their problem or challenge that is experienced in the marketplace? Moving on from that, what is the solution? How is it different? Why are you different? What is the IP? Explain high level, your solution to a problem that exists, and then moving on, how big that market is when you solve that problem. So you've got a market, you've got a go-to-market and sort of a traction model. Most of these, this will come down to, where are you at within SBIR funding, within outside capital, all these different pillars that are available. Talk about the traction that you've made. If you're working with a prime and that prime is willing to partner with you on a follow-on, or they've engaged in, some of them do pork chop contracts, and we can talk about that. Talk about the engagement that you've had with other companies as well. What is the traction that you've received? What is the business model? Again, even if they care about you and are bought into you, they're going to want to make money. So you're going to want to talk to them about not only the market, but how do you make money looking now and into the future. Next, what are the milestones? I think now it's 2 or 3 times I've mentioned this. You're showing them a line and not a dot. Show them progression of the company, the technology, the financials, the customer milestones, what you've personally done to grow your knowledge base within this market. Moving on, financials. What have you done so far? What do the projections look like? What's your pipeline? Be realistic. With every company I've ever evaluated, everybody has the same sort of optimistic viewpoint. As a founder, I had a super optimistic viewpoint. I also had a more realistic viewpoint. If you want to show that, that's great. But again, being realistic, because you're going to get to a due diligence where somebody is going to look in and question those numbers. And if you don't get it at the forefront and you're not direct with that, it's just going to lead to wasted time and effort on both sides. And nobody wants that. Moving from the financials, talk about the team, why this team is the right team to solve this challenge, why this team is better. If you have valuable board members that are going to help you down the road with technology risk or market risk, address that you've thought about these things, because you're going to want to give them the well-rounded pitch. And then lastly, always leave with an ask, right? The goal of that pitch is to get a deal or to get a follow-on discussion for due diligence. So always leave with an ask. So let's move on to the next slide and talk about, wow, you've sold the deal, you've sold the idea. Now you're talking and you're getting a term sheet. What is a term sheet going to consist of? Well, it's going to consist of a lot of things. I wanted to jump into sort of the 3 main areas, and we can maybe get into some of the intricacies, but I will say this is something that is very deal specific. So getting into the weeds with a lot of these may be a bit challenging. So let's talk about some of the money things to consider. How much money are you seeking? How much for a full round? Again, as you're targeting investors, you may just be targeting a portion of an entire round. Of a funding round where you're talking to multiple investors. So think about how much money you're seeking for that specific investor, how much stock or whatever debt instrument you might be using. What is the accrued interest that they may be getting in return for that dollar amount? When does it need to happen? You can open a funding round and have it open for a year and collect investors moving from convertible notes into price rounds over the course of that time. What are the minimums? What are the maximums that you need to close a funding round? Not everything is linear as I'm looking for 100,000 from one individual and only one individual. It could be that you have a funding round of $1 million and you're opening it up with a $250 million or $250,000 convertible note. So think about these milestones as you're putting that money pitch together for a term sheet. Next, and if not, maybe some of the most important things are going to be around the rights. What are the liquidation rights associated with the stock? What are the voting rights that you're going to be offering to these individuals? What are the registration rights? High-level registration rights. They're going to require a company to register and notify the SEC if you ever convert to common stock from converted preferred equity. So an example of this on a registration right is that it's very time-consuming, and you got to have obviously the legal expenses to do it, but you can lock out an investor from selling in a secondary market their shares in your business. Uber does this, which is why you've got paper multimillionaires and billionaires in Uber that aren't able to sell in the secondary market their shares that they've had forever. So thinking about these registration rights, the pro rata rights. Pro rata, think of it as follow-on investment, right? If I'm an investor and I own 10% of your company, I'm going to want pro rata rights. So when you go to raise another round, I have the option to continue to own 10%. While this doesn't diminish you from raising, it can, and people set it up to where they have rights of first refusal, only rights to make that follow-on investment. So these are the things that you're going to want to consider. The rights and restrictions are way more important than the money. And we'll kind of talk about that in the next 2 slides and what that means. Thinking about restrictions, again, what are the founder vesting, additional stock issuance, making sure that you can't dilute the company, what's the debt associated with the financing, any company sales or asset sales, what this actually means to the investor. And then there are other restrictions that you can look at. But from a high level, you're going to be looking at these three main areas when putting together term sheets and what to focus on. And there's a lot of fantastic free agreements that exist out there to start with framing a term sheet that most refined investors even use. So let's move to the next slide and talk about what some of these rights actually mean to your business. Three main rights. I think participating preference and liquidation preferences are a huge area to start with. The main two are going to be in non-participating and participating. I like to add in capped liquidation in there. So just think of the preferences as sort of that amount that the investor is going to get equal to their investment. So whether it's a 1x, sometimes I've seen it up to 2 and 3x, the amount equal to their initial investment plus any accrued interest or unpaid dividends. And then on top of that, what ends up coming back is sort of either a non-participating, where they don't have the option to then gain the upside after their initial investment, or they have participating, which is almost that sort of, I like to call it the double dip, where they not only get the investment money back that they've put into the business, but then also a percentage of the upside equal to what they invested in. So let's look at two scenarios and what that actually means. So an investor puts $15 million into your business, owns 25%. You're doing great. You got a $60 million business on paper. You go and then sell. There's a great strategic partner. You sell for $100 million. In a non-participating liquidation preference, and this is only a 1x, in non-participating, they're going to get their 25%. You're going to get your 75%. All is well in the world. They owned, that part of the business. There was no follow-on investments after that round. But in a participating liquidation preference, they're not only going to get their 15 million back, but out of the 85 million, they're going to get 25% of that business. So it actually comes out a difference of a little over $11 million that goes to that investor. And so this is why I say the valuation almost isn't as important as the terms. And finding that right marriage between the investor and the company is very important. And so while we look at that from the top side investment, again, cap liquidation, I won't talk about this too much. It gives the option to the investor. It's more focused to the VC, that they get the option of which one they want. But I added in here just so that you can get an understanding. Let's move to the next slide. So that's great in an upside scenario, but let's think if you had a down round, or there's not the follow-on, you want to liquidate the assets. So that same $60 million company scenario, you found a buyer, who knows what could have happened. In this case, what do those liquidation preferences mean? Well, in this case, on the non-participating option, the investor is going to get actually 75% of the business. Even if they only own 25% of the company when they invested, they're actually going to get 75% back because they've got that liquidation preference. Same thing on the participating. Not only are they going to get the 75% back, then they're going to additionally get a 25% back of the remaining 5 million. Now think if you sold the company for less than $15 million, as a founder, you'd basically get nothing for all intents and purposes. Now, depending on the voting rights that are associated, this is where those terms actually play a much bigger role, because VCs have an incentive to make sure that their capital is protected and they're making money. So you want to think long term. Again, the money is not always the most important factor. The right money is the most important factor, and what those rights and provision are, the restrictions. So, just talking about the term sheets, again, don't get hung up on valuation. So let's move to the next slide. You've made the pitch. You've gotten the investment right. You answered all the questions. You nailed it. Let's talk about after the investment, because oftentimes I think this is an area that's overlooked. But it's extremely important, and it's extremely important because more often than not, you're not just going to go for one investment. You're going to be thinking about getting multiple investments, and a lot of funds actually set the mandate that they want to take follow-on investments and have funds allocated outward. So they might not just invest $1 million; they may participate in following funding rounds. So doing company product updates, think of a VC like the government. You update them monthly, quarterly, on demand. When we talk about those sort of seed invest and equity crowdfunding platforms, that becomes a little bit more challenging. There are fantastic syndicate funds that do this with programs like AngelList, where you can update them and everything's managed. All the schedules are actually managed through those platforms. But if you take on a VC investor and you need to update them quarterly, I think this is a great aspect. It reaffirms, you just want to sort of reaffirm the behavior much like you do with the government and their milestone reports. Don't just reach out when you have a problem. If you're only reaching out when you have a problem, they may not be inclined to want to help you, further with getting investment or, trying to support you in other aspects beyond the financial needs. If there is a problem, what I like to say is, sort of face it directly, come with a plan of action. If you tell them you hope, I actually did this, and I think the best advice I ever got was, hope is not a plan. Do not come to an investor and say, this is what we're hoping to do. You come to them with a plan of action, so hopes are not plans. So I would say don't approach a problem until you have a solution or some possible solutions to mitigate their risk. They're going to want to see that you've well thought that out. And so what to include in your updates, that's sort of when to update them, what to include. Hit those technology milestones, the financial position of the business, any projections that have changed, risk, have a slide on risk, market risk, technology risk, how they can help. Again, look at this as a pitch to that venture capitalist, that angel investor, as to how they can help you get over some of those risks. I think include a lot of the positives too. If you hired a strategic employee, that's absolutely one of the milestones that you're going to want to reiterate with them, because again, while they don't just want to see the good, they don't just want to see the bad, you want to sort of show them that line and not that dot. So next slide. You've made the investment, you've statused your investors. What should you be thinking about when going on for that follow-on investment? You should always be selling. Be on the lookout of the who's, the when's, how you're going to find them. Continue the process. Even if you don't think you're going to need money, think about needing money. Raise it when you don't need it. That's the easiest time, right? You don't always have that sense of urgency, but you don't have that, eating at your back every single day like I have, how am I going to make payroll? Always be looking for that venture capital. Ask your current investors first. They may have provisions and restrictions that they have right of first refusal. Ask them first. Even if they don't, say, hey, we're thinking about raising, funds for the next round. We wanted to see if you'd be interested. Now, maybe don't do that 3 weeks after you just closed with them, but as you're building that narrative for them, say, hey, we're going to be considering this coming down the road in your quarterly reviews. We're going to be thinking about raising more capital. We're going to be thinking about what's going to be required to commercialize this phase 2 activity, or who we need on the board of directors to help us shape the message to get on a program of record or get a phase 3. And then lastly, again, I've said it multiple times, they don't want to see a dot. They want to see a line. That's 100%. Show them the progress. Let's go to the last slide here. I want to think about, as you're crafting this pitch, how to relate this to the SBIR program. How much effort did you put into your proposal? You spent all this time trying to get the government funding. We've talked about all these paths that you have to take to get VC funding, but then also, what does it actually mean? So the SBIR program, the SBIR, the RIF funds, what they're going to do for you is they're going to bring down the risk. So you want to sell that decreased risk to the investor. You're going to sell that to them, obviously off the technology risk that we've talked about before, but talk about what it means in the product lifecycle and how you can sell that. So I always like to say, again, when you're trying to mirror the two markets together, you've got the risk that they're going to care about in the product lifecycle on the opposite side, and how the benefits there. So I think that's pretty much everything associated with venture capital. I'm going to take a pause here and pass it back over to Phil.
Great, thanks so much, Mike. So what I wanted to do is, we've heard a lot of our panelists talk about sort of, next slide, please, I apologize. Next slide. You've heard a lot of our panelists talk about sort of this macro ecosystem in the defense community and in the greater federal government. And so what we've done on this slide is lay out a lot of the resources that can help you identify additional sources of capital, additional ways to get in contact with program managers and program executive offices, and ways to kind of help further grow your business. And so what I wanted to do now is introduce David Akers from SoftWorks to give us a great example of that program and how they sort of go to market. So David, if you wouldn't mind.
Hello, everyone.
Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. This is David Akers. I just wanted to start off with what is SoftWorks. A lot of folks don't really understand what we are and where we are in the space out there. What we are is a nonprofit organization, and we have a PIA, or a Partnership Intermediary Agreement, with SOCOM. So what that means is we're not a contractor. We don't work necessarily for SOCOM. We work with SOCOM, and we're partnered on a multitude of projects and ideas and concepts. And our goal is to help go out and find the technology and work with, through, and by them to bring it into the either the warfighter or within some other organization so they can be further developed or go into a contract. Kind of expanding on that a little bit, as a nonprofit, we don't own IP, we don't want IP, we don't have patents. So that's one of the benefits of working with us, is that we help facilitate companies to get their prototypes in front of the right individuals, and they own it 100%. Now, what they do in terms of working with VCs and other ventures, that's a separate issue, but from our perspective, we don't own any of that. And another thing to think about is we're actually left to the requirements. And what I mean by that is we're not taking the set of requirements that would go in the normal BAA or some other mechanism. We're actually working, in the very early stages with the concepts and the theories and trying to get those to a prototype state so that we can put it out in front of individuals, and that will actually help drive the requirements that initially get or eventually get issued. Another thing we do is we help the PEOs generate requirements for some of the things that they may have in their roadmap based on the technology that we see out there or the folks that we're interfacing with. And to get an idea in terms of the scope, we're not looking at these $100 million projects. We're looking at the small, 5 people in their garage working on something really cutting edge that they just need that little push to get them over the finish line. So it's typically less than $1 million. In some cases it's greater, but we're looking at mostly the smaller projects to really help the small guy out there and get them in front of the right people. Another advantage of working with us is that we're not the government, and by that I mean that we're not bound by the FAR necessarily. We can negotiate directly with companies through our research and development agreements and through SALs and other mechanisms. And then we can also sit down with a group of individuals who may have complementary technology and get them to work together to form a team to go after a project, whereas the government doesn't have the ability to directly do that because of the competition and so forth that's required as you get into the later phases. Just kind of give you an idea of a typical way that we work. We'll have a project come in, or a warfighter nomination, or it could be something directly tasked by SOCOM that we need to go get after this objective. And then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, well, what's the best way to get after this? And it really just depends on what the particular problem set is. So we can look at doing prize challenges, collaborative events, we can do hackathons, tech sprints, a whole list of things to get after trying to identify someone out there who already has a solution, or maybe has a 50% solution that we can work with and develop to get a little bit further. And just to do one example as a prize challenge, up on our board, you can go to our website now, we have one of trailer brakes. It's under the Maritime PEO. And one of the issues they have is one of their marine trailers, as they pull it in and out of the salt water, it's very difficult to rinse it properly. So it's causing a high failure on 3 of the components within the braking system. Now, they could go to the manufacturer and have them design a solution that could be very expensive, but we can go out to industry and say, hey, what's out there that you can do to get at this, more effectively, lower cost, and fill much more rapidly. For instance, in this particular case, the prize challenge, we're looking at paying a prize for first, second, and third contributors. It doesn't necessarily have to have a prototype. It could be a white paper. But what we'll do then is we can look at that and say, okay, well, maybe the top 2 have a really good idea. They're kind of close, but not quite. And then we can maybe go to a phase 2 and allow them to develop that into a prototype or a demonstration. And by doing that, we meet the requirements in terms of a fair and open competition. And then it can go directly to an OTA, a mid-tier acquisition, or a direct contract. Another thing that we do under some of our collaborative project orders, which is essentially work with the PEOs. They'll give us a bucket of money to fix a problem, and we'll work with maybe the top 2 of a prize challenge to come up with some other type of prototype that's more long and during a larger program, and we'll essentially program manage that, get the prototypes out there, get it in front of the warfighter, let the warfighter go out and do their technical evaluations, and then that can lead on to a follow-on contract as well. What else we have? Another thing that we can do is if it's something that's not out in the marketplace but kind of fits a niche that the warfighter is wanting, or at least something that needs to be evaluated, we can do an in-house prototype. We're doing that with one project now that's pretty large, and then once that it's complete, it goes out for evaluation, and if the customer is happy with it, then we'll just turn that over to them, and then they'll go out and source it either via BAA, because they have all the intellectual property to go out and build it, or they may ask us to go partner several folks to pull that together. And lastly, one of the things that we've really started pushing for in the last few months is working with a number of VC firms, venture capitalists, some accelerators, incubators, both here in the local Tampa area and then also across the country, because we see a lot of good ideas that, maybe it's not the exact thing that SOCOM's looking for, but it is something that does have a place in the commercial markets. So at a minimum, we can start directing those individuals to the different organizations that can help their product get further developed for the commercial market. Or let's say that it's something that SOCOM's not wanting to put money against it in the short run, but they see long-term how it may fit into their roadmap. Well, if we can partner someone with these venture capitalists to go out and develop the product and develop basically a dual-use product so that they can make their money in the commercial sector, but then the government can also come back and just buy it off the shelf as a GSA product. That's a benefit as well. If any questions, that's all I have.
Thanks so much, Dave. I really appreciate it. So we've had a great panel. We've got a lot of resources that have gone out today with a lot of great information. And so what I want to do is bring all of our panelists back for a brief Q&A session. And so I'd love to start with Dr. Weatherly, turning back to your presentation. You mentioned a lot of resources, a lot of ways for folks to engage with Phase 3 and OTA. Would love if you could give us a case study of some sort, of course, leaving out names and things like that. But any examples we can use, kind of see how we can apply this approach more practically.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll try to give you a wild one. So first one that pops in my head is a recent one. So we have a client that we work with. It's a small business. It's a company that does about $3 million annually a year, and they actually never even won an SBIR. And so what we helped that company do was shop the over 250,000 SBIRs that are out there, like I mentioned earlier, and find one that was applicable to what he wanted to do, that matched up with his capabilities, and more importantly, that met his ecosystem of companies that he worked with from a partner basis, from collaboration, like I talked about earlier, and met the needs of some of the government customers that he was working with and was looking to work with. And so in that case, we helped him find and buy an SBIR, including IP data rights technology from another company. So didn't purchase the company, but purchased the actual IP, one of the SBIRs from another company. And then in that case, it was not even a Navy type contract. It was actually a tool that was used to scrape social media data and produce reports and analytics and output. So I'm trying to give you like an example here where I touched pretty much everything I said earlier. And so what him and his company did was they bought the technology. They then went and set up a $50 million Phase 3 contract. Remember, this company, again, does $3 million a year. And so that's in ceiling amount, obviously, $50 million basic ordering agreement with the Navy. And already that government customer that he is working with in the Navy has committed $35 million to that contract, is looking to put in place another $50 million contract. And we have other Navy and Marine Corps customers that are looking to use and have already sent money to that contract. And it wasn't to do anything with social media data. It's to do things with ships and maintenance and all kinds of other types of requirements. So that one case study right there is an example of having a government customer with money no requirement, collaborating with the team, taking a technology that was built for one thing and finding applicability of another, and a couple of the other things I mentioned there. So that's just one quick case study that jumps to mind because that's one that we just worked through and are working through currently.
Great, I appreciate that. And I guess as a quick follow-up, what's sort of the profile of the types of companies you guys work with, just so folks have an understanding?
Yeah, good question. So I think the smallest company we work with is 2 or now 3 people, and the biggest is right under about 500. So somewhere in the middle, kind of happy medium, your typical SBIR company, 50, 100 employees, 150 employees, right around there. That's kind of the sweet spot.
So I want to turn to Mike Pansy about sort of, you talked about this consortia, the DoD, and folks sometimes pay, there's solicitations. Can you give a little more insight? What are the pros and cons people need to think about, and how do they make those initial approaches?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we've seen the dynamics obviously change over the last few years of the traditional pay-to-play model. And there are a couple more open consortia concepts out there with like Vulcan through Special Operations Command and some of these more, I would say, looking at the SOFWORKS, AFWORKS model is almost like a consortia But if you think you're approaching a traditional consortia like on that list, so for example, let's look back at since 2012, ATI. We're talking through ATI, SCRA, Analytic Services, which are technically all kind of one entity. We're talking about over $3 billion passing through a consortium management firm to the various different consortia that exist out there, whether it's the Border Security Technology Consortia, whether it's the Foreign Defense Manufacturing Consortia, Medical CBRN. So again, these are all managed, and why it's important to look at who it's managed by to see the funds that are available via a tool like an intern or Federal Data Procurement Services, USA Spend, to see where the funds are going, how much they have available, much like a VC dry powder, if you will. But then also, what are their specific requirements and solicitations? Oftentimes for small businesses, the consortium are fairly inexpensive to join. As your organization gets a little bit larger, depending on size or revenue, they do have some expensive requirements in there. But they, traditionally the consortia are moving to a more of an open model, for sure.
Great, thank you. And so with that, I want to turn it back over to Jason Talley, our program manager, to kind of conclude this session and give us a summary of where we've been throughout this entire series.
All right, thank you, Phil. And I also want to say thank you to Mike Pansky, Dr. Michael Weatherly, Ann Newman, and Jantla Shumskis, and David Ankers for their insight and their input today. Thank you very much for that. So over the past 8 months, the training and advocacy support team, in close collaboration with the DoD components and private industry subject matter experts, has delivered 11 workshops. These workshops were intended to assist SBIR and SBIR current and prospective companies in increasing their understanding of various topics and best practices related to achieving commercialization success. In case you missed any of our previous workshops or would like to revisit various topics, workshop audio recordings, presentation slides, transcripts, and Q&A can be found on our website at training.defensebusiness.org/workshops. Once again, that's training.defensebusiness.org/workshops. In addition to the workshop content, the website contains other valuable resources such as guidebooks, reports, and profiles designed to help small, innovative businesses achieve success with the federal government and ultimately private industry through the technical insertion, transition, and/or commercialization of their technologies. I'd like to quickly summarize the thinking and design behind our workshop schedule. The first 3 workshops, reading from left to right. Next slide, please. So the first 3 workshops, reading from left to right, were designed to help companies understand the overall SBIR and STTR BAA process. And then include thinking about the critical commercialization plan elements in their submissions and to ask technical clarification questions through the slides and Q&A system once they were no longer had access to the TPOCs. It was important for us to align the delivery and conclusion of these workshops to coincide with the SBIR SITR 18.2 and 18.b BAA schedule. The 4th workshop addressed critical aspects of managing intellectual property and was designed to help companies understand the importance of protecting their technology, beginning with the concept stage, as well as throughout the commercialization process. Next slide, please. So while we stress the importance of reading the BAA component in DoD instructions, we expanded the guidance to include it is essential to read the evaluation and DP process instructions. This was important as some BAA proposals were not considered because offers did not follow explicit directions. And some offers were notified that their proposals were not awarded, but did not understand the DP process. Government panelists stressed the importance of receiving critical feedback that will allow offers to submit improved responses. In workshop number 6, working with prime contractors, we turn our attention to the importance of working with prime contractors, especially if they primed a program of record or significant acquisition whereby the SBIR, STTR company needed to build a relationship. Several prime contractor representatives discussed the most effective way that small businesses should approach and work with prime contractors. During the DoD acquisition, contracting, and accounting workshop number 7, subject matter experts detailed the DoD acquisition process, contracting, accounting systems, and how to get paid on time, which is the most important part, right? If you need detailed information on those topics, please revisit the artifacts on our website. Workshop number 8, next slide, please. I'm sorry, no, go back, I'm sorry about that. Workshop number 8, Marketing, Business Development, and Capture Management Essentials, help companies understand not only what they should do, but how to perform the market research, identify and quantify opportunities, and test the opportunities through a rigorous gauntlet that results in a bid, no bid decision based upon the best information gathered during the capture management process. Money, money, money. Next slide, please. Many companies who sign up for one, several, or all 11 workshops all inquired about support available through the commercialization process. Workshop number 9, Commercialization Assistance Programs and Beyond Phase II Considerations, provided insight into the resources that are available to assist companies attempting to transition or commercialize their technologies. During workshop number 10, Test and Evaluation, 3 separate companies with extensive knowledge of the test and evaluation process shared valuable information about the types of tests, the cost per test, the critical timelines, and more importantly, the lessons learned as both successful and unsuccessful Phase 1 and Phase 2 BAA offers. And of course, today, our final workshop is designed to help you understand the Phase 3 process and how to think about and plan for future funding sources outside of the SBIR program. In addition to the slides presented today, we have included reference slides for various components and information we thought would be useful. Next slide, please. All right, so to sum it all up, I really want to take this opportunity to say thank you to our panelists today. I hope that today's presentation gave you a clear understanding of the Phase 3 process and a deeper insight into the nuances of pursuing non-SBIR funding options. As a project manager for the DoD OUSD R&E, SBIR, and STT Training and Advocacy Support Program, it has been my team's privilege and pleasure to support the small innovative business community in the hopes of extending innovative technologies to the warfighter. Next slide, please. All right. So there are no additional workshops scheduled this year. We do encourage you to review previous workshop slides, audio recordings, and transcripts, which can be found once again at training.defensebusiness.org/recordings. We would appreciate your feedback by completing a survey after this workshop. A link will be displayed at the end of the session. You can also contact us at SBIRtraining@bitecube.com. Once again, it's SBIRtraining@bitecube.com. Right. Also, soon we will have a final survey to wrap up everything, and we would greatly appreciate your feedback. This will help us understand the value and impact that these workshops have had on helping you respond to the recent BAAs, and as well as preparing you for commercialization. Your feedback will help guide our plans for potential workshops. I also want to take a moment to recognize the team responsible for making these workshops possible. Dr. James Galvin and Mr. David Sikora, our DoD SBIR STTR leadership. Ms. Lynn Jenkins, Director of Training and Small Business Subject Matter Expert. Phil Reeves, our Commercialization Specialist. And our program analysts, Jessica Sheaves, Pamela Dogbe, Rebecca Henry, and Boris Zia. So once again, thank you for joining us for these 11 sessions, and we hope to see you guys again next year.